Shit. Madam Chair, Mr.
Yes.
Vonderhyde is the engineer of record for Etherton Heights. That is part of tonight's public hearing, so maybe we can see if he can figure out how to be conversive, and we'll go ahead and proceed forward if there are any other comments for public participation.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to read about the public hearings. Okay. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning these posted items. Generally, for agenda items presented at tonight's public hearings, there is a no action planned for the same meeting. However, at tonight's meetings, you will see public hearings, A, pertaining to Etherton Heights subdivision, and B, pertaining to a waiver from the city's wastewater treatment plants requirement, are also shown under the agenda items for information reports. These public hearings were continued from December meetings, and while accepting additional comments tonight, the remainder of the public hearings will be presented for the first time at a public hearing, and thus no action is planned on these items tonight, and consideration of them is to be taken no earlier than the February 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This approach ensures that the members of the commission hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anyone in attendance at City Hall tonight wanting to speak should fill out a speaker's card and leave them with Mrs. Ripito. Those in attendance via Zoom should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at these hearings. A team member will add you to the list of speakers, which will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it's your turn. The public hearing process is outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, which can be found on the table at the entry area to the council chambers. These guidelines are also provided on tonight's online meeting agenda. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. As outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, speakers who are designated as a group speaker representing more than 5 individuals will be allocated 5 minutes to speak. Those individuals representing themselves will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. The petitioner may have up to 15 minutes to present its items. In addition, information on these items can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation in tonight's hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, the first item on public hearing tonight is PZ 5-24, Etherton Heights, revised, Kara Spree Sudat Properties, LLC, 629 Langton Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, 63105. A request for a change in zoning upon a tract of land that is 3 acres in size, being located on the east side of Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2522 Etherton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 24V530560, which is currently zoned NU Non-Urban Resident District, Town Center Regulating Plan categories, Neighborhood Edge and Neighborhood General Districts. This specific request is to change the zoning district designation from the NU Non-Urban Resident District to the R1A 22,000 square foot resident district. Proposed use, a total of 3 single-family dwellings on individual lots. This particular property is located in Ward 8. And Madam Chair and members of the commission, as was explained in the introductory remarks regarding the public hearing process of the city, this particular item was held open from the December 2024 meeting due to an error in publication that was caused by the local newspaper that is utilized by the city for the purposes of advertisements. Acknowledging that, the city attorney recommended that we proceed forward with the public hearing, although not advertised in the paper, at the December meeting and accept comments, and then publish the appropriate advertisement in advance of tonight's meeting, which was accomplished. So tonight, there is still an opportunity for public comment and accepting public comment as we typically do during a hearing setting. As was also mentioned by the chair, a report has been prepared by the Department of Planning for consideration tonight, given the proposal. Again, it is not intended to offset comments that may be new to the process, but certainly, as you know, as commission members, and as I'll explain now to the public, this is the first of two votes the Planning and Zoning Commission will take regarding this item. The second vote is on the letter of recommendation. So if there are any new comments or anything that would change the direction of the commission or department, we certainly have time to incorporate them before the February 2025 meeting. And with that, I'll conclude and let Ms. Ripito invite any of the speakers, the petitioner first, and any of the public that would like to provide additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich.
The first speaker I have is Ms. Lynn Link.
Good evening, and thank you for all of you for your service to
Thank
our
you.
city.
I think we need your name and your ward.
Lynn Link, I'm Ward 6
Thank you.
and 4028 Indian Ridge. I wanted to talk about two different things tonight. First, the Etherton Heights. I wanted to thank the commission to earlier in 2024 actually listening to the residents who would be most at risk for adverse effects over the development and when they voice their concerns, and for the developer to reduce it from 9 to 3 homes on that lot. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was the large lot subdivision request for a waiver to the city's requirements for large lot single family subdivision requirements of 3 acres per home for the individual wastewater treatment. There are several things that concern me about this. The first concern I had was that there was nowhere in looking through the 30 pages of attachments to this notice in the public hearing did I see the name of the builder of this development. The only names that appeared were for the builder were the representatives of the engineering firm. I had to look on St. Louis County locator numbers that were listed in the public hearing notice and go on the county assessor's real estate lookup website to find out that the owners of the 3 parcels were JGH Building Group LLC, which is located at 2014 Wakefield Farm Road in Glencoe. And then I had to list, find out who, the owners were of that, which is Jonathan and Amy Hill. Anyway, I'm just wondering why the builder's name was not on that paperwork, because all the other paperwork that I've seen on public hearings always gives the name of the builder. Not that it's your fault, but I would have thought the builder would have wanted his name to know. And then, as we know, the 3-acre minimum standard for the building of residential homes on septic derives from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources requirement, so as to mitigate the risk of septic tank contaminating nearby well water. Although it appears that the residents of these new houses will be hooked up to municipal water, many of the other nearby homes are still on well, and waiving this important safety code could put them at risk. Additionally, the St. Louis County GPS map shows there are creeks that could be potentially contaminated. If the builder wants to build 8 homes on 31 acres and cannot hook up to the municipal sewer, or build a communal wastewater treatment, the solution is not to grant a waiver from existing safety codes put in place to keep the citizens' environment and the environment safe. The solution is just to build one less house. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker I have is, and I apologize in advance for butchering this, but is it Mr. Venkat Rathakindi? Oops. I have no more speaker cards for this agenda item. However, if there's anyone currently as a participant that would like to speak to this, if you'd like to raise your hand now, we can promote you to a panelist so that you can speak to this agenda item. That's not clear, so.
Madam Chair, with no other speakers either here in attendance or on Zoom, the department would respectfully request a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Does anyone make a motion to close this public hearing? Just on this one? Mayor Garitano?
Yeah, I make the motion to close this public hearing.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Rubus seconds. That one will be next, sir. Yes. Do we need a roll call vote?
Voice vote would be fine for closing the public
Okay,
hearing.
can we have a voice vote? All in favor of closing this public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstain? Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question. Commissioner Cohn emailed us all back, I think on his audio. I'm not sure when it was when we started, and I'm not sure if Cohn can hear us. I just alerting you to that.
I can hear you
Mr.
now.
Newberry, who's
Yeah.
tracking the meeting at home, said that yes, for a bit there, the sound was muted here from the chambers. According to Mr. Newberry, it now is working. If Mr. Cohn would verify that, it'd be much appreciated.
Verified.
He said yes. Thank you, Mr. Combs.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Okay, Mr. Bunich. I think we have a public hearing on the large lot subdivision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as I explained with the Atherton Heights request, this particular item was also posted for the December 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for public hearing. The same error occurred with the local paper that does the advertisements for the city as required by code. And so under the advice of the city attorney, we held the public hearing in December that held it open. So the advertisement could occur and then additional public comments could be provided tonight. So again, with that, I'll read the request into the record. A response to a communication dated September 23rd, 2024 from Timothy Meyer, Voles Incorporated regarding an application for a waiver to the city requirements for large lot single-family subdivisions being required to install packaged wastewater treatment plants in areas of the Wildwood community not currently served by public sanitary sewers, which would thereby allow the use of individual wastewater treatments on each of the proposed lots of record. This large lot subdivision is being proposed on approximately 31-acre tract of land located on the northwest corner of Pond Road and State Route 100. Street addresses 1855 and 1871 Pond Road and 2005 Linda Jane Lane. St. Louis County locator numbers 23W 610101, 23W 610110, and 23W 520086, and has a zoning district designation of the NU non-urban resident district. A total of 8 lots are being proposed as part of this residential subdivision. And the subdivision is named Hills Hollow Estates Subdivision. This particular property is located in Ward 1. And again, if there are any speakers, both on Zoom or in attendance tonight at City Hall, this is the opportunity to provide comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Ms. Repetto, are there any speaker?
Hi, Greg Marinack, 1518 Schofield Valley Lane, which is in Ward 1. It's about 3,000 feet northeast of the subject property. My neighbors in the Portland Cove and Portland Crest subdivision, which is across the street from Pond Ballfield, are downstream from this property, which is at the headwaters of one of the major tributaries of Bonham Creek, which flows through our neighborhood. So as the eloquent comments that preceded my babbling, we have some a direct interest and some concerns about the quality of water treatment, the sewage treatment issues for this property. And we urged the commission to consider the relative efficacy of these proposed individual septic system sewage treatment systems compared with the required system that they're asking a variance about. And this is more, it's in the line of a comment that we care about it and we'd like you to know that we care about it. But it's even more in the lines of a question, which is, what is the relative efficacy of the currently required system vis-a-vis the proposed variants? So we would love to hear the petitioner or other knowledgeable parties fill us in about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
The next speaker I have is Stu Williams.
Hello, Stu Williams, 1600 Ridge Bend. I don't know my ward. Honorable Mayor, Chairwoman, Commission members, thanks for having us. I appreciate it. So 2 members of the public have already spoken on this issue, and I'd like to sort of reiterate what they are saying. This is evidently a matter of concern for the public. My wife has already spoken on this on December before it got moved to this meeting. So what I'm going to say is basically a synopsis of our concerns. We'd appreciate it if you would deny this waiver. To grant the exception, the developer must demonstrate insurmountable difficulties. We would like some explanation of what those insurmountable difficulties are. We get the feeling that they're simply financial feasibility, that they are not, in fact, insurmountable. If individual systems are used, we have concerns over the risk, as people have talked about water quality. There is risk there. Mr. Vunich stated on December 2nd, there can be substantial problems in the event of failure. The regulations are in place for a reason. Those regulations are typically predicated on experience gained after things have gone wrong. We don't want that to happen. Angela, my wife, has spoken about our daughter and her health needs. When we develop on our property, which will be right next door, we would like to minimize the risk that anything could go wrong, especially with the environmental stuff. So basically, our main concern here is simply proper fidelity to the environmental and the stewardship and security that adhering to these things will bring for all parties concerned, not just us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Repetto?
I have no more speaker cards on this agenda item. However, if anyone that is currently an attendee in Zoom would like to speak to the matter, please use the raise hand feature and we will promote you to speak.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hill is in attendance. He is the applicant, the petitioner, and I believe he would like to speak to the commission.
Mr. Hill, would you like to speak? Okay, come to the microphones. Name and address, please.
My name's Jonathan Hill. I reside at 2014 Wakefield Farms, which is in Ward 1, right behind this development. We have requested this waiver. Specifically, I'd like to address some of the concerns we heard last month along with today. So the MDNR has specific regulations around septic systems and how they're designed within certain size lots. With this specific development, what we have done, and I'd like to share this. So if you guys have probably gone through this, but not everybody has. So I'd like to share the steps we've gone through to ensure that the individual septics are not a health concern for groundwater or contaminations to the creek. And also some of the other concerns that maybe should be considered. to get approval from the MDNR, what you do is you go out and you have to dig test pits, one for every 10 acres, and then you do tests for percolation to understand how much water, what kind of filtration, and you submit this paperwork to MDNR to get an approval. So we've done those steps to get the approval from the MDNR to make sure we fall within those regulations. And then once we have approval and we go to construct a building and an individual septic, we will once again have to do another percolation test, dig a hole where we're putting the specific septic and get that approved through St. Louis County. So there's multiple steps to ensure that what we are installing will fall within regulation and function properly. Again, a lot of this will come down to maintenance, as everybody knows. It lasts so long, and as long as it's maintained, it can last forever. If it's not maintained, it doesn't necessarily work. So that's again where some of the concern, I think, should reside with the single septic systems, because you would then have 8 homes that would be pumped into a septic field, let maintained or not. So if it's not maintained, now you have 8 homes on an unmaintained septic system. That it's hard to manage that. And I know my conversations with Wildwood and with Joe is we've learned some lessons in Wildwood on some of these communal septic systems, how they're maintained. And so that is why we've requested the waiver. Again, it's not ill intent or necessarily financial gain on this. It's ability to continue to provide a house that functions and does not contaminate or hurt any of the residents in the surrounding area. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hill, could I ask you a question? Is public sewer system, are public sewer systems available on Manchester Road or on Pond Road adjacent to this property?
They are not.
On neither road?
Neither road.
Okay. So public sewer systems are not an option whatsoever.
That is correct.
Okay. So then your 2 options are a public communal system or 8 individual home-based systems.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is the last speaker mentioned the current regulations say something to the effect of an insurmountable justification for needing to choose one over the other? Can you speak to that and what really your justification is for wanting 8 individual systems versus 1 communal system?
A lot of it was conversation with Wildwood and lessons learned on previous developments with the communal septic and the maintenance and how that's managed through an HOA. And again, you're reliant on who's flushing what down and how that impacts your neighbors. And, everybody is affording to maintain one system. So it turns into more of a negative for the residents in that specific development than I think the value of having the communal brings.
Thank you.
Mr. Rubis, Commissioner Rubis.
Are you aware of the state or even Wildwood or St. Louis County requiring periodic inspections of either a central septic system or individual septic systems?
I am not. And I'm on a septic myself, and I have not experienced that myself, any kind of random inspection.
So you put it in and nobody checks on it. So we don't know what septic systems in the city today are actually working or not.
Correct.
Okay.
And now in the instance of a home sale, generally a home inspection, they will flag something like that and it will have to be repaired.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Vinich, can you speak? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Jackson first, please.
So this isn't really directed to you. It's a statement. Throughout the time, I've mentioned inspections by the city when a home is sold, because generally people will have an inspector they hire on their own. And if they have a good one, it will check all the things and say this needs to be fixed or up to date. But we have a lot of solar, as we talked about, and we went down this road and there was a compromise by city council I just point out in my tenure, this is my second term, and these items come up, and now we have another one. And the only way you can catch these things, honestly, and if someone lives in a home for 50 years, it's every 50 years, right? But generally people sell their homes and no one likes to pay a city inspection, right? Or do that. I'm just kind of bringing that up. That's the one thing that there was a compromise and that we have some for like multi-dwelling unit sort of things. That it's kind of a trial, but I'm just bringing that up, Mayor and City Council, for the future because it's really hard without a city inspection. So my two cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Bone, did you want to speak?
Yeah.
Born?
Mr. Vunish, can you speak to what inspections are required for community-based sewer systems, please?
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. First and foremost, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources permits these communal or centralized wastewater treatment plants. So that's the first key point, that there is a state review of the design and operational characteristics, and the responsible party, whether it's a homeowner association or other, is required to submit yearly reports. And those yearly reports are to indicate that maintenance is being provided and the effluent that's being discharged into the natural environment meets the minimum standards, which is typically a tertiary level, which is the highest.
So these reports are generated by a third-party inspection company or by the HOA themselves?
In most instances, my experience has been that there is a company engaged by the homeowners association or other party to actually do the maintenance and then do the reporting that's required under state statute.
Okay. I have no relationship with Mr. Hill. I don't know anything about his property, but I happen to live in Homestead Estates. It has a communal wastewater system. And prior to St. Louis County Water being gracious enough to purchase it from our HOA, I know our neighborhood struggled significantly with maintaining that system. And we had a number of sewer gas problems and other things in our lines that were backing up into the homes. They were doing the best they could with whoever was maintaining it, but it was not overly well maintained. So I'm not a huge proponent of these communal systems, just having lived with one. Now, St. Louis County Water, who understands how to maintain these and apparently has taken on multiple ones, they've done a significantly better job, and they apparently have insight that whoever was managing it before did not. So clearly management of these things is crucial. If it's in the hands of one party, it may not function very well, as Mr. Hill spoke. On the other hand, if it's in the hands of someone like St. Louis County Water, it may function perfectly. So anyway, just for informational purposes. Thank you.
And with the chair's permission, I would just note that, yes, Missouri American Water Company has rescued many of these plants from homeowners association responsibilities, and they are experts at it. The idea being is they're protecting their primary water source by ensuring that when effluent is discharged, it's treated to the highest level possible. And we applaud them for that service. In your instance, Homestead Estates, as well as Three Sisters Farm, which is on Rigger Road, just by your home, those two centralized wastewater treatment plants were used as examples of just poor maintenance, lack of oversight by the homeowners association, and generally the reason why the Department of Late has not been supporting them. If we can't count on the homeowners association to do their duty and take it seriously, even if they're trying hard, we know that we're not protecting the environment. It's much easier in many ways to ensure that if there is a problem, it's limited to one lot, not in this case 8, or in your case 60.
I agree. I mean, I'm no expert on waste management systems, but I have a home with an individual sanitary system, and it functions perfectly fine. And I knew our communal system at Homestead Estates did not function overly well. So I don't necessarily, I'm no expert, but it doesn't seem to me that we're necessarily guaranteed of having better outcomes just because we have a communal system than if we have 8 fairly well-maintained individual systems. So.
And when we get to this item on the later in the agenda. The Planning and Zoning Commission, in its last action on a waiver request of this nature, established conditions that I think, for the most part, provide a high level of security that wastewater treatment will be at its highest level and maintenance will at least occur for the first 10 years. And thereafter, hopefully we've created a practice versus an exception.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have anyone else? Any more comments? Can I have a motion to close this public hearing? Mr. Rubis makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Boren. Can we have all in favor to close the public hearing? Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? And abstain. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Vunich, the next public hearing?
Ms. Ripito is going to read the rest of the advertisements into the record. As you know, we were struggling with Zoom, so I was trying to let her pay attention to what needed to be done, and I could do the reading.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vunich. Ms. Ripito, go ahead.
I have a point of information, Director Vunich, regarding the item on the agenda that we just spoke about. I see that we have it under for action. So I'm assuming then that it will be, you're looking for some action from the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding that item of the large lot subdivision request.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if someone that has spoken or has interests in this, please don't leave because we do have it for consideration and first vote. Obviously, if the commission feels that they need to take into account the comments that were made at public hearing, we can postpone either of them or both.
Okay, thank you for providing that clarification. I thought that discussion really had not yet completed with the commission regarding that item. We just completed the public hearing. All right, sorry for that. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Ripito.
Thank you. The next agenda item we have is a request of the City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission regarding PZ 5-22, New Community Church, amended C8 Planned Commercial District in the Town Center Workplace District with a conditional use permit in association with the same. South side of Manchester Road, west of Taylor. Street addresses are 16830, 16832, 16832A, and 16840 Manchester Road, St. Louis County locator numbers 24V630352, 24V630011, 24V610068, and 24V520202, which would revert the current zoning designation of the property to the non-urban residence district. Accompanying this matter is a request to terminate the existing conditional use permit, CUP, associated with the site. These subject requests are due to the required site development plan not being submitted for its review and action by the Planning and Zoning Commission within the allowable 24-month period of time in Board 8.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Mr. Vunich?
Madam Chair, I would like to defer to the city attorney. We lost our sixth member of the commission. We lack quorum. Oh, there he is. Oh, sorry. Didn't see him. I thought. Okay. All right. My apologies. I didn't see him over there. Madam Chair and members of the commission, the Department of Planning is providing to you tonight a report relative to New Community Church and its purchase of an approximately 5-acre tract of land for additional parking and recreational facilities to support their church site. A C8 planned commercial district was granted along with a conditional use permit to accommodate the requested uses that had been sought by the petitioner, New Community Church. The church proceeded forward with the completion of the zoning, and once the zoning was in place and the conditional use permit, a timeline was established. and that timeline related to the submittal of a site development plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration and action. In the site-specific ordinance, as well as the conditional use permit, it specifies that that plan must be submitted within 12 months of the action of City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission. That 12-month period passed. The new community church requested an extension, which is allowable, and an additional 12 months was granted. Subsequent to those two actions by the Planning and Zoning Commission, the new community church has purchased a property in the city of Chesterfield. Due to their expanding membership and the need for more space, they are now looking at another location. In fact, the two properties, the church site itself and this approximately 5-acre site, have been sold recently to another place of worship. Acknowledging that and the fact that the timelines for submittal of a site development plan have passed, the code requires the Department of Planning to post for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission the reversion of the property to its original zoning district designation and the termination of the conditional use permit. Those words are somewhat onerous, but again, New Community Church has a growing membership, which is great. The city is saddened by their departure. They've been a very good partner for the city with our Celebrate Wildwood events and et cetera, but certainly understand the need for space. With that, the department is presenting this item at public hearing tonight for comments. And after comments, a report will be prepared no sooner than February for the consideration of the reversion request to the CA Plan Commercial District and the termination of the conditional use permit that's in association with it. So again, if there are any questions of the department tonight relative to this item, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time. And as with any public hearing, once the department has completed responding to questions or comments, public is free to provide comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Anybody have anything? No? Ms. Ripito? No speakers?
I do not have any speakers on any speaker cards. If anyone and if any participant on Zoom would like to speak to this, please use the raise hand feature and we'll promote you to a panelist. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any. Okay, do we have a motion to close this public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bournes makes a motion and Mr. Rubus seconds that. All in favor of the motion to close? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion to close. It's approved. Mr. Vunich?
I'll be
Oh,
happy to read.
Melly,
the
I'm
next
sorry,
agenda.
Ms. Ripito.
No problem. Thank you. The next agenda item that we have is a request regarding PZ 28-21 Ashley Grove, Cypress Real Estate LLC, with Daniel Stegman, 16100 Swingley Ridge Road, Suite 210, Chesterfield, Missouri 63017. R3 10,000 square foot residence district with a planned residential overlay district, PRD, neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan for a 5-acre parcel of ground that is located on the west side of Center Avenue, south of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2623 Center Avenue, St. Louis County locator number 24V420032, which seeks the reapproval of the previously adopted site-specific governing ordinance establishing a planned residential development overlay district, PRD, for a single-family residential subdivision. Accompanying this request are certain amendments to address the required minimum lot dimensions and roadway design requirements previously stipulated in it. This reapproval request is necessitated given certain timeframes associated with the required site development plan have lapsed at this time. Previously approved and proposed use, a total of 12 new single-family dwellings, along with the retention of existing residents, thereby totaling 13 units, all being on individual lots of record with street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation approval of a total of 11 single new family dwellings along with the retention of the existing residents, thereby totaling 12 units, all being on individual lots of record with street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas. Ward 8.
Mr. Vintage,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, tonight the Department of Planning has provided to you a report relative to this particular public hearing. Different than the last discussion regarding New Community Church, this particular property is zoned a residential zoning district and has an overlay district, the Planned Residential Development Overlay District specifically. The regulations differ between the two underlying zoning district designations. The CA Planned Commercial District, as well as a conditional use permit, allows multiple extensions of time relative to an application of this nature. In this particular case, the Planned Residential Development Overlay District regulations allow just a single extension of time. In this case, the original 12 months that is required for the submittal of a site development plan for review and action by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then an additional 6 months thereafter. That 6-month extension was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. But again, at the conclusion of that 6-month time frame, the site development plan had not been submitted. Therefore, under the regulations contained in the Planned Residential Development Overlay District, the reversion of the zoning must be considered first before the consideration of the reestablishment of the overlay district can proceed. So tonight, the department, per the regulations stipulating such, has prepared this item for public hearing and noted that it would be a reversion from the current zoning district designation with the Planned Residential Development Overlay District in association with it to the NU non-urban resident district. Just a couple of points regarding the property. The property is approximately 5 acres in size. It is part of the town center area. It is on the southernmost boundary of the town center. And previously, the Planning and Zoning Commission, as noted in the advertisement, had supported 12 new single-family detached dwellings on the property and the retention of the property owner's residence on an additional lot. The matter was discussed at the December meeting. The December meeting concluded with a postponement to allow for the posting to proceed forward before any further action would be taken. So tonight, we are here to accept comments relative to this particular item from the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as any public in attendance. And if there are any questions or comments regarding the difference between the two proposals that have been discussed tonight and this one in specific nature, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Vintage. Do we have any comments or questions? Mr. Rubis?
And researching, it looks like when the commission granted the zoning that's in effect now, that seems to relegate what is eventually going to happen there anywhere with the fact that it's in the neighborhood edge district. I don't see any reason to revert the zoning. I think we can keep the zoning. That's just my opinion, but I don't know. Is that something that we have in our purview?
Certainly, in 2 weeks, when the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is scheduled, the department will have prepared a report on this matter. And in that report, the department, as it has alluded to in the information you have for tonight's public hearing, will support the retention of the current zoning district designation and the reestablishment of the overlay district. I just would note that when this particular item was first presented at public hearing and then through the series of meetings with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, a lot of refinements were introduced into the set of conditions to ensure that concerns that were identified by the residents in Stone Mill subdivision, the development immediately to the south, sharing a common boundary line, and those residents on Center Avenue had their concerns addressed as well. Certainly, it being part of town center, the density is always a key component. It's greater than what is allowed in the non-urban, the suburban, and or industrial districts. But again, I believe that there was a fine line that had been established to ensure that there was reasonable density on this property, not too much density, and that concerns about views and et cetera were addressed. So in 2 weeks, the department does plan on having a report with recommendation prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, Mayor Garitano?
Yeah, I just want to get clarification here. So do we have any speakers at all for this item on tonight's agenda?
I don't have any speaker cards. If anybody in attendance on Zoom would like to speak to this, please use the raise hand feature and we will promote you to a panelist. Does not appear so.
I believe we have a resident that is just raised their hand in the room. Since we are in a public hearing, I'll hand this over back to our chair and you can go ahead and.
Okay, it was
Sir,
approved.
we need your name and your
I'm
address,
sorry,
please.
Gene Calcaterra, 17024 Valstone, Elcourt, Stone Valley subdivision. 2.5 years ago, the council approved and planning and zoning approved 11 lots, 9 of which would have side entry garages. 2 were going to have 1 front entry and 2 side entry garages. And the road at the end was not going to have a cul-de-sac, but was going to have what they call a T turnaround. And I polled the neighborhood, Stone Mill, as well as Bordeaux and up and down Center Avenue. And that became acceptable with all the residents. There were going to be 11 lots plus the 1, total of 12. Everybody was pretty well content and satisfied. Okay, we don't think we were being too onerous. We weren't asking for Wildwood to buy it as a park or anything like that, like people do. And we thought that 12 lots on 5 acres is sufficient. And we just approved, or I guess about to approve, 3 lots on 3 acres. So we don't think we were being unreasonable, I guess is what I'm really trying to say, saying that 12 lots on 5 acres is okay. The biggest issue now is putting putting Ashley Lane, I guess it's going to be called, through to Center Avenue. If you look on what's being proposed, he put a typical curb cut there. Now, he's proposing to put some kind of gate across there. We're thinking it might be like one of these parking gates you have at the airport or something. I don't really know because nobody has seen it. But that's our biggest concern. And that people are going to cut through from 109 and cut through there to get to Center Avenue to go up. And then they're further east. They avoid the light down at Old Manchester and 109. And so we just don't think that's the right thing to do. Now, he's saying it's an emergency gate. Well, when they come out of that firehouse, whether it be an ambulance or a fire truck, they're going to hit West Avenue first. They're not going to drive up the Center, come up Center, get out with a key, unlock to get in. They're going to go up and get in West Avenue and get into the new subdivision from there. So I guess what we're asking is that you stick to your guns. It was approved 2.5 years ago. The only reason they want to get 13 lots, we all know what it is. It's more profit. And I know who the builder of that he's proposed buying it. And they just want to get more houses on 5 acres of ground. We don't think we're being unreasonable. That, I think, is the key here. If we were saying, oh, no, they got to be 1 acre lots, that's unreasonable. But because it's in the district, why we don't think that that's an unreasonable stance that the residents take. And Mayor Boland said in the meeting 2.5 years ago that he would like to see the houses built of the same architecture, look, design, materials that are currently there. So what the residents that I've talked to and your constituents, et cetera, they just feel as though enough's enough. We think 12 lots is more than fair. And that's what we need to stick to and reapprove the plan that they had that made everybody accept what was going on there rather than reopening a can of worms. Thank you very much. Yes.
Mr. Rubus.
My understanding is that this plan is no longer viable because it didn't come in the required time frame. So we're, as far as I'm concerned, we're not talking about a plan. There's no plan there now.
I assume it's
Director
not.
Vunich, can you specify what would be allowed under the non-urban residential?
With 5 acres, one home on the 5-acre lot.
Okay, so basically, because no site development plan was ever submitted and the time for the extension has passed, then the plan has expired, basically. So now it's back to the drawing board and cleaning the slate, basically, with the non-urban residential, if the commission chooses to go to that. And that just only allows one lot per 3 acres, one parcel, one home. So if they wish to come back to the city at some point, they would be starting all over again with a whole new plan. It might be the same, it might be different. We just don't know. Director Vunich?
Well, first and foremost, I misspoke and made a mistake. The applicant, the petitioner, is not seeking 13 lots. My math was off. They are showing a plan with 12 lots inclusive of the existing single-family dwelling. So my apologies for that confusion. So 12 lots is identified on the plan that is part of the public hearing packet, and the conditions that were approved by City Council indicate 12 lots inclusive of the existing dwelling. So my apologies. And certainly, if the commission were to proceed forward and revert the zoning to the NU non-urban resident district, then yes, this plan that is before you tonight would be null and void. The department anticipates using that plan to create a recommendation that supports the development of the property with the 5 acres with 12 lots.
So just to clarify again, the department would propose the site development plan. If I recall at the last meeting we had a month ago, the petitioner had yet to provide a site development plan. And my comments around that were is that if they're serious about doing something, we need a site development plan. Otherwise, there's nothing to move forward with at this point. Although that proposal with the department, and the department may not have a recommendation yet, you tell me, is it they're proposing just the plan that was previously approved, keeping that on the table?
Yes, as the commission is aware, when the zoning process starts, we require with a planned residential development overlay district, what we call preliminary development plan. That preliminary development plan is what is used to basically make decisions whether the project is suitable or not. And then if it is suitable, we use it to create the conditions. And so that preliminary development plan, which is what you have as part of the packet tonight, is basically the site development plan, but not with all of the detail yet. The detail being the conditions that are established by an affirmative action by City Council to grant the zoning and the overlay district. So again, there is no site development plan, but we are starting kind of like you had mentioned, Mr. Mayor, from scratch, and the department will proceed forward based upon what available information it has.
Okay. And I understand this is only a public hearing, so no decision would be made until it comes back as a for action item at a future meeting, might be next month, it sounds like. So that's when the commission will take action on it. But it seems like nothing's materialized at this point.
Well, again, the petitioner's engineer is in attendance tonight. I'm sure you can refine the plan if the commission should seek before the department completes its report. But again, I just want to emphasize the proposal that will be before you at the next meeting or whenever this matter is taken up is for 12 lots, not 13. I just
Okay.
want to make sure you understand
12,
that.
including the existing home that is there.
Correct.
That's what we had previously.
Yeah, I
while
misunderstood
back.
that.
Okay.
I thought we had 13 going, so I apologize.
No, it was my mistake, so
That's-
don't apologize, Mr.
Okay.
Calcaterra.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any more comments? Nope. Okay, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Jackson, do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Boren, all in favor for the motion to close, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and all opposed? Any abstain? Okay, matters closed. Thank you very much. Okay, now we move on to the two information reports. The first information report tonight is going to be read by Ms. Ripito. You'd like to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first information report is regarding PZ 5-24 Etherton Heights revised in care of Spree Sedutas Properties LLC, 629 Langdon Drive, St. Louis, Missouri 63105. A request to change in zoning upon a tract of land that is 3 acres in size being located on the east side of Etherton Road, north of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2522 Etherton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 24V 530560, which is currently zoned NU, non-urban residence district, in Town Center, Neighborhood Edge, and Neighborhood General Districts to the R1A 22,000 square foot residence district. The proposed use is a total of 3 single-family dwellings on individual lots in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight an information report with recommendation regarding the matter that Ms. Ripito just read into tonight's record. This particular matter relates to the development of a 3-acre tract of land located on the east side of Etherton Road, north of Manchester Road, with 3 single-family dwellings on individual lots. The tract of land is 3 acres, so the lots are proposed at approximately 1 acre each. The homes that are to be placed on the properties will be custom builds, and they will front, meaning the front of the dwelling will face toward Etherton Road, as is the pattern both with existing and new dwellings that are in place along the same street. The department has reviewed the request and is issuing a report with recommendation that is favorable to the rezoning from the NU non-urban resident district to the R1A 22,000 square foot resident district. This change in zoning would allow the plan as presented as part of tonight's packet of information to proceed forward to the next step, which is the site development plan. So tonight, again, the department believes that the proposal, based upon the town center plan and the designations of land use from the town center plan for the property, are consistent with what is being proposed. The design complies with the key elements of the development pattern and street pattern in the area, and those things that are necessary to ensure that new urbanism in terms of design, streetscape, street standards, and others are met will be achieved through the zoning ordinance or the subdivision and development regulations. So again, tonight, the department has a favorable recommendation for consideration, and Ms. Ripito, City Attorney, Mr. Brown, and I are available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. So do we need a motion before we can talk about it? Does anyone have a motion? Mr. Mayor Garitano?
Yeah, I will make a motion in support of the department's recommendation regarding the 3 homes on this property.
And Mr. Rubus seconds. Does anyone have any discussion?
Yeah, I'll make some comments regarding my motion here. I think that considering that we had seen, compared to what we have before us tonight, significantly higher density for this 3-acre parcel, and now we have 3 homes, which averages to about 1 acre per home. These may be the largest parcels with homes in all of Ward 8. So, that's a bit unusual, and for people that wish to move to have a nice piece of property. Also, good point made by one of our speakers here this evening. This addresses the issue of connecting these homes to sewer so that we don't have to worry about issues because public sewer MSD is provided on this street. So great point made earlier that this would resolve what some of the other homes in that area have septic systems. So great for that. I think that's it. Based on the drawing here, I do just perhaps either it's a piece of feedback, but is the front of these homes in alignment with some of the other homes that are on Etherton Road, or do these seem a little bit closer to Etherton Road? I see the garage adjacent, so it is somewhat close to that.
So generally speaking, it's a bit of a mix. The newer dwellings that are part of Main Street Crossing and Canberry are probably consistent, meaning with these three, in that the typical front yard setback or build-to line for newer projects has been anywhere from 10 to 25 feet. Whereas the older homes, they are generally zoned in the district NU, non-urban resident, and therefore their setbacks are 50 feet. Now, saying all of that, some of these homes have been constructed prior to 1965, so the setback then, I believe, was about 25 to 30 feet that St. Louis County utilized. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But what I will tell you is that for the most part, if it's a newer dwelling, the front building line or the build-to line are consistent.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And then the only other comment I'll make is these homes will have beautiful backyards. I mean, all the concerns that have been brought up about water runoff. I mean, there's a lot of space back there to absorb the water. So thank you for presenting that.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Okay, can we have a roll call vote? Please.
Commissioner Boren,
Approved.
Chair Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes. Yes.
is that a yes, Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano.
Yes.
All right. Passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our second item of old business. Ms. Ripito?
The next agenda item is a response to a communication dated September 23rd, 2024 from Timothy Meyer, Vols Incorporated, regarding an application for a waiver to the city's requirements for a large lot single-family subdivision being required to install packaged wastewater treatment plants in areas of the Wildwood community not currently serviced by public sanitary sewers, which would thereby allow the use of individual wastewater treatment systems on each of the proposed lots of record. This large lot subdivision is being proposed upon an approximately 31-acre tract of land located on the northwest corner of Pond Road and State Route 100. Street addresses 1855 and 1871 Pond Road and 2005 Linda Jane Lane, St. Louis County locator numbers 23W610101, 23W610110, and 23W520086, and has a zoning district designation of the non-urban residence district. A total of 8 lots are being proposed as part of this residential subdivision, Hills Hollow Estate subdivision. Ward 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I do want to note that petitioner, as well as those that had spoken relative to this matter at public hearing, have all left the room. Don't know if they're still in the building or not, but certainly I wish they had stayed to hear the presentation and the consideration by the commission. Regardless, the department has prepared a report for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding this waiver request. The request specifically seeks to have 8 individual household treatment systems on each of the proposed 8 lots versus a centralized wastewater treatment plant. In the report, the department notes that originally, when the centralized wastewater treatment plant was established, which is early on in the history of the city, information provided by St. Louis County and the Department of Health and Senior Services with the state of Missouri indicated that generally speaking, maintenance of individual systems on singular lots was generally not to the manufacturer or code required levels. This concerned the city officials at that time, given that many of the same locations where individual or non-public wastewater treatment occurs is also those areas that are on groundwater and potable wells. To avert what was considered an issue, the city council established the requirement for centralized wastewater treatment. That requirement was applied early on in many instances, and in the report, the department identifies them as Three Sisters Farm, Autumn Farms, Homestead Estates, and August Tavern Creek Estates. These larger subdivisions in terms of number of units, all again in a 3-acre density area, installed these plants. The key to the support for these plants had always been the state permitting requirement for construction and operational purposes, as well as the annual reporting. The city also went a step further and required certain specifications and requirements relative to them as well. When Payne Family Homes proposed a 25-lot development on a portion of this same tract of land, at that time it was a total of 78 acres, the surrounding community came and spoke at public meetings as well as the public hearing, and identified that many of the plants that have been cited as being examples of this application of regulation were not functioning, and in many instances not being maintained to the desired level. This city, the planning department, visited those locations and discovered that that had been the case. Most recently, though, as has been described in the report, many of the subdivisions that are now being submitted for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission are nowhere near their maximum yield, even in the 3-acre density areas of the city. And oftentimes the yield is much less than what is allowed by the NU non-urban resident district. And in those instances where the numbers are favorable, the department has supported waiver requests, as it is in this case. As part of the last waiver request that was acted upon favorably by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which was the West Eden subdivision at Bills Rose Road and Route 100, a number of conditions were established in this regard. These conditions were intended to ensure that if individual systems were allowed on each of the lots, there would be a guarantee that treatment would be at the highest level. Those conditions are identified on pages 3 and 4 of the department's report. Those conditions, for the most part, speak to the following: that a tertiary level of treatment must be required. That's a 95% treatment of the effluent, and that's the highest level required by the state of Missouri and St. Louis County. That the indentures establish maintenance requirements for each of the individual facilities, and the developer will provide per lot $2,600, a total of $20,800 that will be in an account to the benefit of the homeowners association to ensure that maintenance is carried out. That total amount of $20,800 will be maintained regardless of required expenditures for a period of no less than 10 years. So the intent is to put teeth into the maintenance requirement via this assessment to the developer. Any reimbursement to the original amount will be a responsibility of the developer, homeowners association, or both, depending on the development, when the development is completed. And again, the commission had believed this to be a reasonable and prudent method to ensure long-term maintenance. The drain fields cannot be in any resource protected area. Again, those areas where runoff is greater than anticipated and absorption is less. Also, if the development were to seek additional lots, given that they are not at the maximum density of the non-urban resident district, the development design of the subdivision must take into account that if a ninth lot is ever sought, centralized wastewater would be required, that the area in a subdivision, an area in the subdivision must be set aside for that plant. So either an easement or common ground. If the easement is established, there must be access to it. Again, ensuring that it can be maintained, and that the requirement that all home dwellings anticipate such a connection when the plumbing is designed. And then finally, that the abandonment of any individual household treatment systems, if the lots were ever to exceed 8, would be done according to the plumbing code of St. Louis County and any state requirements. Again, there are steps to ensure that there are never more than 8 lots on the 31 acres, which is the last of those components. And then there are assurances, both from the standpoint of requirements and monetary guarantees, that maintenance will occur at least for the first 10 years on a regular basis. And if there are any issues, those issues can be addressed. So tonight, the department is respectfully submitting a favorable report regarding this particular request. I would just add a sidebar to the presentation of the department. The code is clear that there is a discussion of insurmountable difficulties. And I think the insurmountable difficulties, and it was alluded to by Commissioner Voren, is that we ask homeowners associations, generally 3 individuals within the development, the subdivision, to take on a pretty high task. And that's understanding how to maintain, in many instances, centralized wastewater treatment plants, and ensure that the contractor, if one is hired, is capable of meeting the standards that are set by the state and city. That is a tall order, and we found that not to be the case in almost all instances where we found the success we had hoped. So one problem is better than one problem that is fed by 8 homes, 30 homes, 60 homes. And that is the insurmountable difficulty that the department is identifying tonight. And with that, the department will close, and if there are any questions or comments, we'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vintage. Before I ask anyone, I have a question or two. First of all, I appreciate everything. I have 2 questions. Number 1, can you address the homeowners' concerns about the potential danger to Bonhomme Creek?
Well, certainly runoff is a key component. There's 2 components of runoff. One is stormwater, which comes off of impervious surfaces associated with any new project that has concrete, asphalt, shingles, etc. And that is surface runoff into the drainage system. The other is the individual household treatment systems discharged through a drain field into the soil. The discharge is metered, and generally speaking, the amount of discharge is nowhere near that of, let's say, a centralized wastewater treatment plant. Because again, the tank that is part of the system, the individual system, is based upon 120 gallons of capacity per bedroom. So even if you have 5 bedrooms, you're talking 1,000 gallons. The tank retains much of that, allows the solids to settle, and then disperses the liquids into the drain field. Most of these now are on some type of system that douses it on a period of time and then settles, then douses and settles, etc. So I'm not concerned about too much effluent. The concern, I think, underlying the speaker's comments is making sure that effluent meets the highest level of treatment. I would just note that this particular site used to be agricultural, and they grew corn on the property, which tells me that the soils there are much better than most in Wildwood. Most of our soils in the large lot areas of Wildwood are chert and clay. And here to get corn to grow tells me that they have at least a decent soil profile, which better enables effluent to be treated.
My second question is one to kind of alleviate my confusion. So I hear you keep saying that these individual lots are better than the bigger ones. So whose regulation or law is it about these? Is it the city of Wildwoods that is requiring the group? Okay, so then my question is that something that should be looked at by the city council to maybe change that law?
We did discuss it during our review of the subdivision and development regulations. And when Mr. Young and I, along with Ms. Ripito and Mr. Newberry, have prepared the report, you'll probably see a change.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments? No? Mr. Rubus, Commissioner Rubus.
The septic system, I'm not all that familiar with the septic system, but there are homes in that area right now that are on individual septic systems.
I would say the vast majority are on individual systems, even Portland Cove and Portland Cove Estates. They do not have a plant per se.
So I'm having a hard time seeing the danger of adding 8 more individual systems when there's already plenty of systems there now. I don't think 8's going to push and I'm, like I said, I'm not familiar with it, but is that good thinking or bad thinking?
I actually think it's good thinking because these 8 systems will be the most regulated of any of those that are in the area now, just because if the commission endorses the waiver and city council accepts it, we're going to have a guarantee of tertiary level treatment, which is standard. We're going to have a financial guarantee, and then we're also going to have protections in place for the future.
And what is the purpose of the $20,000?
Let's say that an individual is not maintaining their septic system and there is a problem. Let's say that untreated effluents coming to the surface at the drain field location. The homeowners association can identify it. The city can identify it. If the individual, the property owner, doesn't fix it, there's money there for the homeowners association or the city to make those repairs. And as part of the plat and indentures, there will be rights to the homeowners association, particularly to access the property if they need to make repairs.
Okay, so they say they have to spend $2,000 to remediate this. Now the fund is $18,000. The way I read this is they have to make that whole again.
Correct. The maximum amount of $20,800 has to be maintained either through the developer, the property owner, or another entity for at least 10 years.
So, yeah, I guess maybe interest. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize. I guess I should have asked before I started having a conversation if we had any motions. So do we have a motion? I will can I make a motion as the chair or no?
I would ask the city attorney, since you are the vice chair.
Mr. Cohn,
I make a motion to approve the city's recommendations. The department's
we
recommendations.
cannot hear you. Did you make a motion to approve the city's recommendation?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner Cohn did. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Bourne seconds that. Okay. Now, do we have any conversation left to be had? Apologize for that. Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Coe,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis.
Yes.
Mayor
Yes.
Garrett, Commissioner Clayton, Depler, Beatty, and Councilmember Gross. That's it.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, with your permission, to ask the city attorney, given the vote 5-1 in favor of the recommendation, and this is not a rezoning per se, I guess, did it fail for lack of a majority, or was it approved by a majority of the members present?
Mr. Vernich, if I could have a moment to consult with the bylaws.
He's muted.
Highlighted it, those asked.
Mr. Young, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
I'm sorry, I thought I had unmuted. I'm reviewing the bylaws. Just if I could have a moment, please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Oh, you're muted again?
Does he understand that Joe Vunich asked him a question?
Yes, I heard the
believe-
question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just looking at the bylaws. I'm unmuting I'm muting it while I'm looking at the bylaws. When I'm ready to speak, I'll indicate that by unmuting myself.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
Can you repeat what was said? I'm having trouble
He-
hearing him.
He's muted himself while he's looking through some documents to
Okay,
answer Mr.
perhaps-
Vunich's question.
Yeah, in the meantime, maybe you could see if you could raise that volume a little bit. Thank you.
And I apologize. I just want to make sure I understand what the action was so that if I get questions tomorrow from any of the speakers during public hearing, I can respond to them accurately. I apologize for the delay.
Okay, thank you for your patience. I've confirmed that because it is not a conditional use permit or a zoning change, a vote approved by a majority of the members present results in the motion passing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, sorry, Mr. Young, I apologize.
So the item passes.
Madam Chair, based upon the fact that it doesn't relate to a conditional use permit or a rezoning recommendation, the majority rules and the recommendation is approved by a vote of 5-1.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, next, we have new business. We have 2 items for consideration. Ms. Ripito, would you like to read?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item we have on the agenda is a response of the Department of Planning with recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding PZ 15-17 Babler Farms LLC in care of Tom Roberts, 550 Lori Lane, Wildwood, Missouri 63005, non-urban or NU non-urban residence district, and the FPNU floodplain non-urban residence district with a conditional use permit for 59.9 acre tract of land that is located at the terminus of Lori Lane. Locator numbers 20X630015 and 20X630024. Street addresses are 500 and 550 Lori Lane, which seeks the renewal of the existing conditional use permit associated with a large water feature, i.e. a lake and waterfall structure. This renewal request is a condition of the approved permit. Accompanying this review is a request for the Planning and Zoning Commission to modify one of its conditions set forth as part of its approval of the site development plan and eliminate the requirements relative to certain trade permits needed for these improvements, which again include the lake and waterfall structure in Ward 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vunich?
Excuse me. Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as was just described by Ms. Ripito in reading the advertisement into the record, this particular request is twofold. Excuse me again. The first of those components is a request to extend the conditional use permit that was granted by the City of Wildwood to Mr. Roberts, the applicant, for the large water feature and associated waterfall. The conditional use permit requires that after the completion of the zoning process, which is typically the approval of the site development plan and the recording of the conditions along with legal description with St. Louis County, its recorder of deeds, that year period started. That year period now has concluded and is the reason this matter is before you. The department believes that the conditional use permit should be extended. The petitioner, Mr. Roberts, granted permission to the Department of Planning to visit the property a couple of months ago. I will attest that the large water feature is in immaculate condition. It has been well kept, as well as the waterfall structure itself. There is nothing in terms of the condition of the features, nor the property that would indicate that there is a problem that would necessitate the conditional use permit not being granted the requested extension. As part of the request, the second component is the permit issue. As you may recall, the Planning and Zoning Commission concurred with the request of the department to allow the site development plan to be completed based upon the submittal provided by the petitioner with 3 conditions associated with it. The appropriate plan sheets need to be updated to indicate pre-treatment of runoff into the large water feature so as to do pre-treatment, so to speak, of that runoff that funnels into the lake feature. That has been completed. The other was to provide a bond in the amount of $5,000 to ensure that any nuisance or maintenance issues that might arise could be addressed by the city, if not by the property owner petitioner in this case. That has been completed. The bond is part of the packet of information you have tonight. The third item was the permit issue relating to the installation of the pump house, which provides the circulation from the large water feature, the water source, to the waterfall where it's discharged. When this particular matter began, and that was 2017, St. Louis County had yet to complete the update of the plumbing code. Plumbing code requires now that there be pre-treatment of that water from the lake prior to it being discharged at the waterfall structure. That pre-treatment, based upon an assessment of the department, will require the major alterations to the existing system as it exists today. The department has worked with the petitioner and St. Louis County to find a reasonable solution to the permit requirement. However, the department has been unable to reach that reasonable solution, and tonight is recommending that that condition associated with the site development plan be voided by the members of this commission. The rationale for this request from the Department of Planning is more practical than anything. For the past 8 years, the facility under the Planning and Zoning Commission's authorization has operated, and it has operated well. There have been complaints from one neighbor. That neighbor specifically was concerned about noise and the impact of the spray from the discharge of the water at the top of the waterfall impacting health. In those instances, both the city and the petitioner worked together to basically do a noise study, which was found to be not a problem. And we had water testing. And again, based upon the company that did the water testing, indicated they did not believe there was a public health risk. Those findings were questioned by the neighbor who had identified the concerns. But again, we used legitimate testing firms to ensure that we receive fair and appropriate results. If the waterfall structure, primarily the pump house, that is the key component between the lake, the large water feature, and the waterfall structure, had been permitted at the time of construction, the pretreatment requirement would not have been applied. Again, the new plumbing code added it. It was not part of the plumbing code at the time of construction. Suffice to say, a great deal of time has passed. The home construction started in 2012. We're now going on 13 years. I have become what I would believe an unwelcome guest to the property owners based upon the number of items I've had to visit and discuss with them. And I think at this stage, the department is recommending, again, the permit not be required, but that the renewal period remain at 1 year until such time that the upgrades are made to ensure that there is no problem with the existing operation and that the petitioner concur that if a major upgrade or repair is required to the pump house, the current code requirements will be applicable. We believe those two steps will address any concerns that may the surrounding property owners or the property owner may have regarding the application of the permit requirement, and therefore would be a reasonable approach to bring closure to an issue that has gone on much too long in the opinion of the department. So tonight, the department is recommending the conditional use permit be extended for a year, and that as a condition of that, the renewal period remain at 1 year for a period of time until such upgrades are made to current code, and that the petitioner acknowledge that when those upgrades are made, they will follow the permit process, whatever may be in place at that time. If there are any questions or comments regarding the department's recommendation, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Commissioner Jackson,
to approve your recommendation.
do we have a second? Do we have any comments? Mayor Garitano? No?
I believe Mr. Cohn is making the second.
Yeah, yes,
Okay, Mr. Cohn is made a second.
correct. Yeah.
Commissioner Rubis?
I remember back several years ago when the city spent a lot of money trying to verify, I think, the impossible. Have, in this period since it was first, how many complaints have we had where people were going deaf by the noise of the equipment, or the odor was driving them in their homes, and possible cancer development? Have we had any kind of interaction?
The neighbor to the property that identified the concerns initially continued to identify them consistently over the course of the last several years. In fact, the department receives sunshine requests almost weekly, asking for any communications between Mr. Roberts, the city of Wildwood, and St. Louis County. And again, in all of those communications, there was a consistent message that the permit requirements were difficult to assess at this time. And certainly, the department was trying to work a solution with St. Louis County. That particular neighbor has moved and is no longer residing in that location. And again, I mentioned in the report, the department has not heard from the new neighbor regarding any concerns regarding sound or health.
And the do I understand that there is a problem between St. Louis County coming up with some definitive answers to the,
I don't think St. Louis County has an issue regarding definitive answers. They have a plumbing code that says pretreatment is required. They basically packaged it all in terms of their concerns and a request to pursue this in municipal court and sent it to the city. The department's been hesitant to send this matter to municipal court, quite frankly, because it just it lacks a basis that I believe that creates the level of threat that's been identified. And there is no sound issue. There may be an inconvenience issue regarding the sound, but again, testing done by McClure Engineering, a firm that the city's used for 20 plus years, indicated that it didn't exceed a level of, I think, 41 or 42 decibels, which is almost imperceptible. And in terms of the health requirements, we got information from the neighbors saying it was a problem. We got testimony from others saying it wasn't. We did the testing of the water source itself. We required pretreatment. Again, the steps that have been taken, I think, generally tried to address both parties in a fair and reasonable and appropriate manner. The department is saying now is we're at least at the 8th year from the conditional use permit process starting, and we're at now 13 years since home building started on the 125 acre property. So from the standpoint of the department, I think common sense needs to rule the day, and we'll put in the protections so that when things are changed, new code requirements will be applied, wherever they may be, and that we'll see the applicant, the petitioner, on a yearly basis until such time. And I think that's a fair approach.
so
Mayor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
he would have to come back every year to get it renewed. If we eliminate the permitting problem and subsequent renewals bring to light there is a problem, we can reinstate that item into the CUP.
Certainly, and as part of that renewal process, we'll ask, have you changed the pump house or any components associated with it? And if the answer is yes, then we know that before the renewal can take place, the improvements need to be permitted. It's not a foolproof method. I think the benefit of the doubt should go to the property owner in this instance. They've done nothing that would indicate that they're not concerned about their personal safety or anyone else that resides nearby.
Thank you. Mayor Garitano?
Yeah, thank you, Director Vunich. It's interesting to see this item come back again, as it has been discussed in many years that I have been on council. So that whole debate, discussion regarding the extensive testing by experts in the field and out of state, I think we've discussed that. That discussion is over. At this point, it's more about the permitting, I guess, or process here. And I know that the department has spent significant amount of time, resources of the city on this topic here. I do just wonder, I saw that, it's a annual period here, but I mean, does it make sense? Is it, to do it every 2 years or something like that? Or are you set on the once a year? Only because, I just want to make sure for the department's sake that you've got the time to focus on some of the more critical issues we've got in our city.
Given the level of concern about the health issues, the department thought that at least for the near term, an annual renewal was appropriate. Mr. Roberts is represented by a general counsel now that works for his company. I believe they've agreed to it. And so from that perspective, if next year the commission were to feel, yes, if we came back with a clean slate, we could talk about a 2 year or 3 year.
Yeah, I would think so. Again, I think the extensive amount of testing and Obviously, the property owner, we've seen him at several meetings. He's back again. He's living. So obviously there's, I think the proximity of the property owners to the waterfall, we would have known if there was some kind of issue. They're right there, right next to it. So I think that, I'm just trying to look for efficiency, but if you said that you've discussed and once a year is fine, I guess we can revisit that.
And you can revisit it in 2026, you can revisit it in 2027. Again, I just think to just make sure that we've tucked the sheet in and made a tight bed, so to speak, we should probably have the year-end renewal at least one more year till 2026, and then take an assessment at that time and see if it's necessary or not.
Yeah, I would say that if we're going to do that, then maybe just put in, whether it's the motion, that if there's no issue, then in a year that be considered to move it to, every 2 years or 3 years, just because, there'll be a different group of folks potentially that are looking at this issue. And again, this just comes back enough every time that there's a whole different group of people. And so you're kind of restarting over again, and it's been discussed quite a bit.
And Mr. Mayor, I think your point is well taken in that the department initially was thinking about amending the language in the conditional use permit to remove the 3-year and be consistent with 1 year. It did not, because again, it thinks, let's see what happens. And so this is just a condition associated with the extension of the permit. And so it gives us a greater amount of flexibility, I think, at the end.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the department's recommendation. Can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Mayor Garitano,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Chair Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. All right. And
Madam Chair, did you hear Mr. Cohen's
I
motion?
did, and he sounded wonderful. Okay, let's see, what do we have next? We have the next item on the agenda is the sign amendment. Ms. Ripito?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next agenda item is a request to post for public hearing the consideration of possible amendments to Chapter 415, 410 sign regulations for FPPS, NU, and all R districts, and Chapter 415, 4.420 sign regulations for C and M districts of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, to consider the addition of new language to allow electronic message boards for certain institutional, not-for-profit, and commercial organizations. Currently, these types of displays are prohibited within the City of Wildwood, all wards. Thank you.
Mr. Runich?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And I would just note that Mr. Newberry had prepared a couple of these reports, and he would have presented tonight. Given he's under the weather, you've had to listen to me present all of them, and my apologies.
We do miss Travis. Go ahead.
I
But we are
appreciate
so grateful that Ms. Ripito is here.
Yes, just a different voice and cadence would have been nice tonight, I'm sure, for you. So my apologies. Madam Chair and members of the commission, the department was recently contacted by 2 city council members that represent Ward 6 about electronic message boards and why they are prohibited in the city. The department responded that this particular item has been considered on multiple occasions, and in each instance was not supported either by the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council, or both. The 2 city council members asked that the Planning and Zoning respectfully reconsider this particular item. I explained to those 2 individuals that for that reconsideration to take place, the Planning and Zoning Commission would have to authorize the city post it for public hearing. Suffice to say, this is a difficult issue and has been the center of many discussions in the past. And certainly there is no particular right or wrong answer. Some communities authorize them, some communities do not. Some communities that do authorize them have a number of regulations to ensure that they are appropriately utilized. And tonight, the department is just respectfully requesting for the city council members that we at least move forward with posting the matter for a public hearing and have the opportunity to revisit it one more time based upon new technology, changes in application, et cetera, that I know has occurred over the last 8 years. And with that, the department is respectfully requesting authorization to post. The posting does not advocate for it or necessarily not advocate for it. It is just an opportunity to accept comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I have a question for you, and that is, if we make this motion, when would be the soonest that it would come in front of us?
Well, it will not be in February because I believe we missed the 2-week deadline for posting. If Mr. Newberry was here, he could give you certain assurances. But I guess I'll cover both bases and say it will be no sooner than February and no later than March.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vunich. We also appreciate you, not just Ms. Ripto, Mr. Newberry. Mayor Garitano?
Yeah, thank you for that. I had heard one of those council members regarding the requests, and I know that there's interest by the high school regarding this, and that was the case previously. I do think that, and I'm going to look for your guidance in this, because I do know it is a sensitive subject, especially if there isn't clear definition as to what is being proposed. And, I think that the technology, as you mentioned, has advanced. But there are, I think, guardrails that I believe our residents would appreciate, like flashing or graphics that move. I think there are things that, maybe perhaps some dimming in the evening, so it's not like a sign on the Vegas Strip. And I've seen this in other municipalities. I believe Town and Country and the Pair have those. I've seen it at least in Clayton Road and Manchester. But what I notice about their signs that are different than I see in other municipalities is how they don't flash or they're more subtle, that they blend in a way. But that is the big thing. So I think looking for your guidance, if the city's going to propose to put that there, would it make sense that at least what is something that is being entertained, those guardrails be defined so that as not to, propose something that, without having those guardrails in place, you can leave it to the imagination as to what is a digital sign. It could be like a television monitor. So I think that would have to be ironed out, or perhaps the department already has ideas with that, because I think that's important for our residents to know what is it exactly that you're thinking when we look at this before considering it seriously.
Well, certainly the department, in this particular case, particularly the director, has the availability of our city attorney, who has many other clients around the St. Louis region. And we can tap into his knowledge base. And sitting next to me, Ms. Ripito, who's worked at 2 other cities, Town and Country and Manchester, and can bring her insights and her experiences as well. The department at times has leaned toward authorizing or supporting electronic message boards. The struggle we're having with signage right now, I don't know if I'm ready to dive into the deep end of the pool and say, let's add another new type of sign. But certainly, the example I've used recently, it was kind of a misty day. I was coming to work, heading north on Route 109. at LaSalle Springs Middle School, I saw two young ladies, one holding up the glass cover for the sign that has the lettering you place, and the other placing the signs. And I'm thinking this probably isn't the best approach to getting a message out to the community. So I can guarantee you that the department, if the commission were to support posting for public hearing, would enter this very, very, very cautiously.
I
Commissioner-
appreciate those comments. I do think it has to be looked at and I use the phrase having those guardrails in place so that we just don't have kind of a runaway usage of electronic signboards and, you know, perhaps restricted to only certain types of, you know, buildings that we have in our city. Like the
Thank you,
school.
sir.
Thank you.
I
Thank you, Mayor
appreciate it.
Garitano. Commissioner Jackson?
I thought it was maybe a year ago we covered this ground. When did we go through this exhaustive process?
The last exhaustive process was 2017. We did touch upon it in 2020 when we did the overall update to the sign regulations to address the Supreme Court's ruling about content neutral. And so we touched upon it then. We didn't spend a lot of time because at that point, we were just 2 or 3 years out from the last discussion.
Okay, so I was part of the latter, and
Yes.
I thought that was the P and Z said no.
Correct.
And so now we're bringing it back up. And I mean, we've had an election. We've got 2 new council people in my ward. And I get it, but we've been very clear on this matter about electronic signs. And obviously the P and Z is a buffer. I mean, what is the benefit to go through this process again? Outside, I mean, we touched on it, which confirmed from 3 years ago. And so I'm trying to get convinced to support this, and I'll if we need to, and I'll defer to the mayor, but I would definitely right now say no.
So within the last 4 years, I would draw an analogy between changing technology and signage to changing technology on the smartphone that you have in your hand most of the time. A lot of changes have occurred. It's always reasonable, in the opinion of the department, at least see what's new, how do they address concerns like the non-intermittent flashing, the quick transitions, brightness, all those things that make them offensive, and something I know that the department wouldn't want to recommend to our residents in Wildwood.
Well, what I'll end my statements on, once you open this back up, it's hard to say, well, a school can have it, but this business can't have it. And then it's got anyone that does this historically. So where I'm at right now, I would make a motion to not approve it, but I'm not going to. I will defer to the mayor. This is a city council issue and it came from them. And I'll defer and I'll support the team appropriately. But as of right now, I don't see why we should do it.
Well, you encapsulated the discussion in 2020 perfectly. It was, we all thought places of worship and schools might be appropriate, but then everybody got concerned because what if all the businesses want one and it's just all of a sudden we have all these bright signs to our commercial districts and it's not the flavor we want. And so that led to the discussion.
Mr. Vunich, I think that, so I've been on many of those and we've been kind of exhaustive about it, and it's the conversations have gone all over. I know that Babbler Elementary has a new sign and it has LEDs, but it doesn't reach a certain threshold of lumens or whatever they call it. That's what Walmart calls their light bulbs. And they have to go off at 8 o'clock or a certain time. So I think that one of the concerns, I think you mentioned that it was just going to be like educational and institutional and churches and things like that. One of the big concerns was in the residential areas. So yes, Lafayette High School's on 109 and St. Alvin Rose on 109 and some of the new, but there's also a church on Strecker Road that directly faces homes. And what do they do? So I my personal opinion is that I don't have a problem with you opening up and looking into it. I mean, knowledge is power. And yes, technology has changed, but I would say that I don't believe that the people's opinions in those areas have changed. My other question is, we're getting ready to have this, the charter master plan, big whole thing. And would that be something that they could address out of curiosity? Thank you.
Again, from the perspective of the update of the master plan on this 10-year cycle that all of you will be participants in, generally, we don't get to that level of detail of individual regulations relative to types of signage. We look at the larger issue. In this case, in terms of signage, it may be, do we allow monument signs elsewhere than Route 109 and Route 100? That's a major prohibition. So again, we just haven't gotten to that level of detail. We look at the larger issues and go from there.
Thank you very much. We have Miss Commissioner Rubis, please. Go ahead.
No, if we have a public hearing, would it be a petitioner coming representing, or is it just kind of in general?
You, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, would be the petitioner requesting the review, not making a determination until the review is complete.
Who would be presenting for our side? You?
The Department of Planning, and I would beg upon our city administrator, who used to be our economic development manager, as well as our city attorney, to participate.
Okay, Mr. Lee's got his hand raised. Would you like to speak, Mr. Lee?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted to, I've done a little research on this, and this is something our business community has pushed onto. This specific request is coming a little bit more from an institutional base, but I completely understand the concern from this perspective of having commercial entities using these. I'd like to maybe get input from the city attorney, and this would be done with a little bit more research on the matter, but the research I've seen is that you're able to restrict this based off zoning. So there are, at least from what I've been able to read, there's a way to make it so that, only institutional zoning areas like, churches and or schools, fire districts, things along those lines that are more governmental entities would be allowed to have this type of signage. And that's a question I have for the city attorney to weigh in on, if you don't mind, John, if you could, if that is legal. It's something I've seen other cities do. I don't know for sure if it's a path we want to go down, if it could be challenged, but having one for certain class of different institutions. And then just in general too, I also read just for some additional context that a lot of other cities have gone in and they will not tie this directly in with their typical sign ordinances, their sign code. They will go in and actually have this be its own section, and you'll have to get a separate permit for it. So say you wanted to get a wall sign put up, that's one thing, but to get an electric sign, a digital messaging board sign, you'd have to go through a different process. That's at least what other cities have done, but other things you want to look at, I've seen some horror stories with, brightness. If you don't put like a brightness limit on there, it can be pretty distracting, and also can be, that's really where you start seeing that, Las Vegas feel, if you will. There are signs these days, speaking of what Mr. Vunch was saying, that, there have been changes. A lot of these new signs have the ability to automatically, tint the actual light, so it'll become dimmer as the sun comes up, and then it'll become brighter. Actually, vice versa. It'll become dimmer at night and then brighten when the sun comes up. Another component, though, too, is just that you don't want these things blinking. In a lot of cities, what I've seen is kind of the standard is that each message has to have a duration of at least 10 seconds. Can't have any flashing, blinking, or any scrolling text. But a really large consideration that could really help, if this is something we'd even want to consider, which it does open quite a few, it's a Pandora's box because there are going to be commercial entities that want this. But if you really look at the resolution of the digital messaging board that could be provided, if you heighten that to a level in which it becomes, first and foremost, a pretty expensive sign, there are signs out there that aren't those big blotchy dots. They're more so looking like a real monitor. And if you can do that, those are also typically the ones that have the auto tint and the auto features that would allow it to kind of blend in a little bit more. But overall, I do share just from my own personal perspective, just with the amount of businesses that do ask about this type of this signage. It is something that we may want to just be careful on, just trying to advise the commissioners as good as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mayor Garritano.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a lot of the points that have just been made in this discussion validate my concern is that I think it's just too undefined prime time, like, to have it before public hearing. I mean, Commissioner Jackson, I think you made my point there, right? We just don't know what the sign or the idea being proposed is. I feel like it would be best if there was something that we can react to that would help implement those restrictions, like perhaps the sign, Commissioner Helfrey, and again, not advocating for or against, but Commissioner Helfrey said, I think she said she saw somewhere where there's a sign and it turns off at a certain time. Or it was mentioned that, a sign dims in the evening, so there isn't that brightness. I think that, probably most people don't want to see video graphics, like just swirling around or something like that on the screen. I mean, I think, text might be something, but it's hard to get into the discussion without at least having some concept that we could react to. And then I think once we feel comfortable, then we can ask our citizens to comment on it. I mean, we may come up with something that maybe the interested party is not interested in. And so I think we need to have some framework to react to as a commission to say, this is kind of what we're thinking, because I do feel with it not being defined, there's just so much left to interpretation by whichever individual is looking at the hearing. And, we can maybe try to focus that conversation or those comments based on some kind of framework there, because I think that I'm going to take a wild guess, but I think a lot of us would agree that, I called them guardrails, whatever you call them, but, there's certain things, if we want to really seriously entertain this, if I was the petitioner, you probably at least want to have something that has a chance versus just throwing out an idea and then all of a sudden, you're rehashing what Commissioner Jackson brought up before. And I think that's really what wasn't defined in the past. It's like, if the technology is advanced, let's look at what are the things that can address some of the concerns we've heard before, and then bring it forward to hopefully have a best chance of success, but that works for the city. Because I do think they're valid concerns. What kind of, uses would they be allowed? Would they be just ground-based? There's probably some good best practices that we can learn from a lot of cities so we don't have to reinvent the wheel too.
What if you do a public hearing on it and there's going to be camps that could just totally think Wildwood's heading in a direction that you're just having a public hearing without the research. So I don't know who the research person is or entity. Didn't you say the master plan group, or maybe it's someone else, and just kind of slow roll this a little bit?
Or perhaps is it something like I wonder if maybe the commission could take it up as a kind of like a work session type item or something like that.
Yeah, get some experts.
Commissioner Bowen, did you want to say something? Warren, did you want to say something?
The gentleman from Ward 6 brought the subject up. Can we put it back to them to narrow this subject so that we can revisit it at a future date?
We could certainly ask them for their input, but with the permission of the commission, we would take no action on this item tonight, but the commission would direct the department to schedule a work session and have examples of good applications, bad applications, the components of both, and at least give you some basis for consideration of a public hearing.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is you'd like for us to make a motion to suggest possibly that. I would like to make a comment that if we do that, one of the things Commissioner Rubis said was, hey, let's have an expert come and talk to us about it. And I know that the department is always, give us a lot of information, so I'm grateful for that. If we do go this route, what I would request personally is pictures of what we are discussing, because as brilliant as I think I am, sometimes I don't understand when you say this type of light. I would like to see an actual picture of it. So if we're going down that road, that would be my ask. Mr. Rubis kind of mentioned maybe having somebody that's an expert, but I kind of feel like you become an expert because of all the research you and the department do. So you're looking for a motion from us tonight to guide you in what the next step is. So does anyone have a motion for the city?
I have a thought, and I'll ask the city attorney, because this is going to go back for conversation. We can, under Robert's rules, we could table this. And once you're done having your conversations, with the city council and talking to that, someone can make a motion to untable and address the matter then. That is a way. So you're not saying no, yes or no, one way or the other. You're just tabling it until you get your ducks in a row and more information. And it can be untabled at any time.
Mr. Vunish, were you stating that you needed us to make a motion to give you guidance to do the research?
Respectfully, the department would ask that action be deferred on this particular matter relative to the public hearing to a future date, and that the commission authorizes the department to prepare research for presentation at a work session.
Okay, so you need a motion to defer. That's what you're looking for. And then a separate motion to authorize.
Authorize the department to conduct research for a work session on the matter. And at that work session, we will have an expert and we'll have photographs and videos of what looks good and what looks bad.
Thank you very much. Okay, so do we have a motion to defer? Chair Rubis makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Boren has seconded that motion. Can we have a voice vote? All in favor to defer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Wait, that was an exception. Okay, any opposed? No abstentions? Okay, that motion goes. Then do we have any motions to authorize the city to do some research and have a work session? Chair Rubis makes that, or Commissioner Rubis makes that motion. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Commissioner Bowen makes a second on that. Can we have a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, we have our motions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. And with that, I believe that concludes our meeting. And so thank you, everyone, for all you do for our city, especially you in the city. Oh, yeah, we need that emotion. So, yeah. Second, thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thanks again for coming out in the cold. We do appreciate it very much.